Hey everybody, welcome back to ChallengeYourself.blog. I wanted to go over some 3D printer upgrades that I made, so let's get started. So as you can see in the background, I have this new cover. It's a Creality brand cover that I bought off of Amazon. Part of the reason I did this was I was having a lot of trouble with some of the prints that I was doing. And what I wanted to do was kind of take a break from printing the robotic hand and focus on the quality of the prints that I was doing. And I kind of wanted to go over the progression of what transpired during this printing process, where I decided to stop and reevaluate the whole printing process. So I have a few example parts that I was printing off to do as examples. So like the first part that really turned out poorly was this one. For the most part, the part itself turned out pretty good, but I couldn't get the support raft to actually break off of the part. I tried cutting it away and it was just kind of turning into a huge mess. So that night I stopped, because this part takes about 4 hours to print. That's actually what's printing now. And then I started printing off another one, and I got partway through it, and I noticed that it had like this shift in the middle of the layer, and I thought, well, maybe this is a slicing error or something that happened. But I'm like, well, wait a minute. I would take the same drawing and I would run it through the slicer a few different ways, different settings and stuff. So the drawing itself hadn't changed, but the slicing settings did. So that's why I say maybe it had a slicing error. So in this third part, I basically ended up with like a step stair configuration here, or result. This was the final straw. This is what kind of broke the camel's back, and I said, all right, I got to figure out what this is going on. So I was looking through different forums. I had basically 4 quality issues that were popping up, and 2 of them were kind of related, dotted line, connected type thing, but the other 2 were not anything directly related. So I'll start with the first 2. I had basically on this part I had showed a moment ago, you can see that there's a really rough support interface. This is where the raft, you have a raft, and then you have like this interface, which is where you're supposed to be able to break the part away, and then you kind of clean that up, and then you have your part. But then the support itself, sometimes, depending on some of your settings, can end up stuck to the part. And you can't get the interface broken away. So there's kind of 2 different things, and I don't want to dive into that too deep because it's a rabbit hole. The third thing was I had poor adhesion to the support plate. That turned out to be mainly due to the Z-axis being a little bit too far away from the plate, and I was having a lot of trouble. Like, I would level the bed, think I'm all good. Some things would print, some things would not. Well, one thing that I didn't think I could do, but I found out after reading it and doing a little trial and error, is I'm able to now kind of level it on the fly. I do, like, there's these little knobs that you turn to level the bed, and while it was printing, I would kind of tighten it down a little bit, and you could really see the improvement of the adhesion and everything, like, on the fly. So but that's a little tricky. It takes a little practice to get that right. But probably the biggest thing, and I was showing the step stair layer shift issue that from a moment ago, and the primary driver of this was I had a loose belt, and that will kill you pretty much 9 times out of 10, and it's a big deal. And I mentioned this probably in one of my earlier videos, where I would sometimes see holes that were not quite round. I actually almost threw this away. Well, I did throw this away, but I almost threw it completely away where I wouldn't have been able to use this as an example. So as you can see here, that hole is kind of oblong, and even the whole shape of this part. This was probably, I want to say, maybe the second part that I'd ever printed off this thing, and it didn't work. It looked nice at first, but when I looked at the hole and was like, well, what do I do with this? This was because of a loose belt. So basically, by tightening the belt, that round whole issue went away completely. Some of the other upgrades that I made to the 3D printer itself, and these are found on Thingiverse. There was a fan shroud cover, and basically if you have any filament that comes off, there's a fan that is vertically installed below the heated bed. That fan, the filament, if for some reason I'm doing any testing, or if I'm changing out the filament and whatever, that can flow off the, it can cool and end up with like the thread, and it can go down and mess up your fan. So for whatever reason, they didn't design, this to me is a poor design from the manufacturer. So the fan shroud is something that you can print off of Thingiverse, and it blows the air horizontally, so you don't have to worry about the filament threads and stuff getting down in your fan and ruining it. The second thing I did, and this is where the loose belt also gave me some issues, was I did a filament guide, and that's basically like a little arm that hangs off the end of the support beam corner where the spool of filament hangs. And what this does is your filament comes off the roll, goes horizontally out, and then arcs back in. Instead of having basically the spool would go right off down and then go back into the printer, into the extruder, and you have not a hard 90, but it'd be like a long 90, and you have, because the filament can get a little brittle, it creates kind of a mess. It's not, I don't know why this isn't part of the design as well, but the first one I printed, the dimensions were kind of off, and that was because the belt wasn't tight, and I was trying to file it down, and I couldn't get it to fit. It looked nice, it just dimensionally didn't fit. So what was it, a week ago, maybe around the time that I did the last video, or maybe a day or two afterwards, I reprinted that filament arm, and it turned out really well. I had to file off a couple corners just to help guide it in when installing it. That filament guide has been a blessing because I'd be sitting here, I'd be working on stuff, and all of a sudden I'd hear snap, boing, and the filament would break, and then I'd have to heat up the tool, pull it out, try to get it back in there. It's a bear. I don't like doing it. And it started happening probably around halfway through the roll, and the closer I get to the end, the worse it's getting. So a couple days ago, I was sitting here, printer wasn't even running, hadn't been run for a day or two, and I'm just sitting here, and it goes snap, snap, and I see that, and it broke at the top, and it broke at the bottom. So I had a couple different places. I hadn't installed the cover yet, so one of the things I did is I heated up the bed after I got this thing hooked up. I heated up the bed, I heated up the tool, kind of got the thing nice and warmer than ambient in here, and it helped with getting that. What I found was the stuff was really brittle, but when I started warming it up in there, it got a little bit more pliable, and I was able to feed it back into the extruder without it having, breaking the line. So that was a big deal. One of the other things that I kind of ran into along the way, and this was actually more for my sinuses than anything, my office here is actually on, I don't want to say, I guess you could call it like basement level, but because the place, where we're living is kind of on a hill, it's like first floor is where you go out the front door, and the basement door goes out the back door. We have central air here, and it runs. Being Virginia, there's high humidity, especially being a little bit closer to the coast. So I thought maybe that the air conditioning was enough to take out some of the dampness in the basement. But I've had a dehumidifier for several years now, and I never ran it here. Well, I decided maybe a week, probably about a week ago, I started running it, and I was blown away by how much moisture it's been taken out. I've been having to empty it once or twice a day, and it's a pretty good size unit, so it's not like it's not like a little one. It's fairly good size, but I think that is probably going to help out with some of the quality issues as well, or at least with keeping the quality of the filament. So one of the last upgrades I'm going to go over in today's video is I installed a camera for my Raspberry Pi. This runs the Octoprint, and it really helps out with keeping track of what's going on with the camera. If I step away, go up, make a cup of coffee or something, I can see whether or not I'm creating a spaghetti mess on the printer. So it's been really beneficial. And I did get a replacement screen for the 3D printer, which was really good. If you haven't seen in some of my earlier videos, the screen display had kind of conked out after a few days, but so far the new screen's working really well. So that's basically it for now. I just wanted to kind of go over what was going on with the 3D printer. I haven't done a video for probably about a week, but I wanted to go through some of the quality issues and some of the things I was doing to remedy those. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video. It really helps out the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.